again, congratulations, Anne, on a very well-deserved honour. And it's in recognition of all of the good work that we know you put in for the community. So congratulations on behalf of the IJB, and as I say, publicly recognise your role. So congratulations. I don't. You're very welcome. I'd also like to welcome new additions to the board, Peter Knight and Councillor Mary Dixon. A formal welcome. We sort of had a welcome for you in your absence at the last meeting, but since you weren't around to receive it, I thought I'd do it again.
John,
yeah.
John.
Oh, hello. Not getting anything. Is that you, Peter? I'll just carry on.
Sorry, John. I cannot get my camera to work, so I'm going to log out
and log back in again. Well, yeah, okay. welcome to West Lothian. The gremlins are already striking. Yeah. So welcome to both Peter and to Mary. Finally, I believe we have a couple of observers from the NHS Talent Management Programme. Claire Danskin and Tracy Stewart, you are welcome to join us today. So I'd like to get underway. Anastasia, any formal apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we have apologies from Alan McCloskey and from Donald Noble, and George Gordon has indicated that he's going to be a little bit late today.
Yes, thank you very much. That's great. Order of business, Anastasia. I think we're expecting a change in the agenda, yes?
Yes, Chair. I think Alison White was going to speak to that, and we will need your agreement for it.
Yes, Alison?
Apologies, we were just looking to move a couple of things around the agenda. So in terms of 4 decision reports, the order we're proposing would be my Chief Officer report, the Scottish Budget 26-27, followed by obesity medicines. Luckily, it's not me speaking to that paper when we get to it, because it seems I'm unable to say the title. So the obesity medicines paper, followed by the Independent Advocacy Strategic Plan. Then we have 3 papers for information and discussion, which is the Chief Social Work Officer Annual Report, the IJB budget consultation activities, and the Pharmacy First and prescribing paper that we would suggest. And then obviously we've got the work plan and date of next meeting. So it is a bit of a move around on the agenda, and apologies, but hopefully members are content with us moving those. So our decision papers are all together, followed by the information and discussion papers.
Yeah, I think for me, it actually makes more sense in that order than the original agenda. Do we have any objections to the changing of order of the agenda?
Here, can I just ask that we give that in agenda number, because all the titles and wherever else they're going, I'm not clear. I know that you want to move it, but where is it going before item 6 or 7 or wherever, please?
I think what it looks like what we're doing is we're moving the all of the items for decision. So Chief Officer's report would come first, then the Scottish Budget, then the obesity medicine, then the West Lothian Independent Advocacy. So I think ahead of each of those, if we can refer back to their original agenda numbers, Alison, that'd be useful, just in case anybody gets a bit out of sync. Is that okay with you, Tom?
Yes. So these are coming after 7.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
yes.
Yes.
Great. Thank
Sorry,
you.
my apologies, Tom. Right. Everybody else happy with that? Thank you very much. Any declarations of interest? No to declaration of interest. And I think, can we confirm the draft minutes of the last meeting? Is everybody happy with those? I just have one observation. I seem to remember that I chaired that meeting and not Tom.
Yes.
Although I know we look very similar, and it's very easy to confuse us. But I seem to remember being put through sitting in the hot seat for that meeting. So if we could correct that, that would be good. Anybody else? Any issues or objections, modifications to the last minutes? Thank you. Item 5, minutes for noting. We've got the Joint Board Audit Risk and Governance Committee.
Is that close?
Oh, sorry.
do it.
Yep, sorry, is somebody wanted to come in there? Oh, okay. So minutes for noting the Audit, Risk and Governance Committee and the Strategic Planning Group. Are we happy with those minutes? Anybody have any objections? Thank you. Anastasia, any membership and meeting changes that we need to be aware of?
Yeah, there's nothing to report today, no.
Thank you, Anastasia. Yeah, I think we had quite a bit last time, so it's nice to settle down again. So into item 7, Chief Officer's Report. Alison.
Thank you, Chair. It's quite a long report for you today with a number of different items that we're looking to cover. You've already referenced and you've got the minutes included, but we had our Audit, Risk and Governance Committee on the 18th of December, and we've included a link to the papers within that and given a highlight of some of the areas we've covered. We also met as a strategic planning group on the 15th of January. It was a really positive meeting with lots of really good discussion. A number of those papers have followed through and are on the agenda for you all today. But there were a couple of items that were discussed but don't form part of your agenda for today. One of which was around the Community Mental Health and Wellbeing Fund. And Alan McCloskey unfortunately isn't here today to give more detail, but he provided an overview of some of the approaches that have been taken to allocating funding and how that's been utilised and used on a local basis. And that's been a really positive bit of collaborative work that we've been undertaking. And we also had some discussion about the self-assessment questionnaire for Strategic Planning Group, and we are looking at how we extend some of the membership around that. So part of that will feed into how we move forward. Board members will be aware that we had a development session on the 12th of January. We covered 4 key areas as part of that. So just and board members were provided with information on our hospital at home services, budget consultation update, the multidisciplinary locality model that we have been developing, and the pharmacy and prescribing overview that was shared with board members for information. We responded to a Scottish Government consultation in terms of integration joint board voting right regulations, and the responses included in Appendix 2. It was not circulated to the board prior because of very tight timelines for us to be able to respond. So as officers, we liaised with the chair around our response to that. Not included within the report, but for note for board members, we've had another call for evidence for a committee, which is about care home services visit to and by care home residents. I think that had been referred to as Anne's Law in some of the earlier bits of discussion around this. We have been asked to respond to a number of questions on that, but the response date for that is Monday the 9th of February, and we only received that request yesterday. So again, we are not going to be able to bring that to the board prior to submission, but it does feel an important set of regulations that we are able to contribute to. We will obviously circulate that around board members once we've been able to do that for your information. We've shared a link to the state and future of social work and social care funding in Scotland that has been written by Social Work Scotland in collaboration with key partners in terms of staffing and users of service. And good timing that has come out on the day that we also have Joe talking about the Chief Social Work Officer report in terms of that focus and some of the challenges. So we've provided the link for you there in terms of, I think, doesn't make it good news, but I think some of the challenges that we are experiencing, and Joe articulates for you regularly at board meetings, I suppose to see that is a nationwide challenge and looking at what some of those solutions might be in terms of how we address it. We've also shared a link to some work that the Coalition of Care and Support Providers in Scotland had done around their concerns about the real living wage uplift. And you will have seen in numerous places around the challenge around the estimated shortfall of circa £15 million across Scotland to realise that in terms of the commitment that has been made from Scottish Government and the challenge that will have in terms of budget pressures for ourselves as IJBs, but also budget pressures and challenges for sustainability in the care sector that we rely significantly on, not just in West Lothian, but across Scotland. Section 7 is highlighting the Mental Welfare Commission report that they have recently published in terms of right to advocacy, where they have reviewed advocacy plans across Scotland. Again, really good timing that we have Lorna on today talking about what we are doing locally, and I suppose that's addresses any of the issues that are being flagged within this report, and we're really clear in terms of where we are with that, but just wanted to make sure that members were cited on what was happening nationally around that and how the work that Lorna will take us through it kind of feeds into that and links to that really clearly. John has obviously already stolen my thunder in terms of Anne's award in terms of the Order of the British Empire, so we can note that again, and you take all of the thanks you can get today, so congratulations on that. And Section 9, we are talking about hospital at home direction. As part of our internal audit review, we have agreed to review decisions that have been made by the board to check whether or not we feel actually a direction should have been issued about any decisions that have been taken. We did undertake that review for the last quarter, and we are recommending to board members that we do need to, in fact, issue a direction to NHS Lothian in relation to the IJB's decision on the hospital at home report that was taken on the 16th of December, and a draft direction is provided at Appendix 1 for you. Under Section 10, due to the late Scottish Government budget settlement, we have been unable to get all of the numbers that we would ordinarily have, and you'll obviously note as members that Hamish's report this time is slightly different and focusing more broadly on the financial context in Scotland. So we are really keen, however, that we get the Q3 numbers to board members. So it's proposed to bring forward the Audit, Risk and Governance Committee to the 5th of March, which the Chief Finance Officer will be able to report at that point on the Q3 figures, which means they are available before we do our budget setting meeting at the end of March. There is an offer for other board members to be invited to attend, and whilst there wouldn't be voting rights, it would just be the core Audit, Risk and Governance members who would be able to vote or act accordingly. It would be an opportunity for members to attend, ask questions and understand the context, and if board does agree to this, then invitations to that meeting will be extended. It is a Teams meeting for information. Sorry, it's a very long report with lots of different things on it this time. Under action item 11, we agreed to ensure that we were keeping members updated of how we were following through on actions that had been requested. And at the December meeting, it was agreed that a letter would be drafted on behalf of the board about the ongoing financial pressure to be issued to the local MSPs. We've included under Appendix 3 a draft. There were some amendments to that, and since we've sent that, those letters have been sent out to all of the local MSPs, and we will ensure that we circulate around to board members the final version of that letter. With regards to complaints and information requests, there were no complaints received in Q4. In terms of information requests, you'll see that there were none received during that period as well. So a little bit of an eclectic mix of information for you all as board members today, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Alison. A very comprehensive report. Does anybody have any questions for Alison around any of those, the wide-ranging topics? Stevie.
Thanks, John. Alison.
Oh, you're a bit quiet, Stevie, for me. I don't know whether it's you. We're not getting your usual sonorous tones coming out of the speakers.
The velvet voice, is that it?
Oh, that's better. Yes, that's much better.
Okay, thanks. I forgot what I was going to ask now. No, Alison, it was regarding the letters that were sent out. If we do get any replies, will they be passed around the board?
Yes, happy at the point that we get responses to also share those and make sure that board members are aware of responses that we receive. Obviously, we'll have the budget meeting, and as this was particularly about budget, we would include those formally at the next meeting, but we will obviously let board members know in advance.
Perfect. Good to know who bothers to get back to us, that's all.
Yeah,
thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Stevie. Anne?
I had a couple of questions, one around the advocacy, and I was planning on just leaving that for Lorna's piece. Is that okay?
That's fine.
I'm perfectly happy that Lorna gets the tricky questions on advocacy rather than myself, Anne, so no problem with that.
In terms of the voting rights, I just wanted to clarify something around the short life working group that's now been established around that. Whilst I'm not on it, I've been asked for input to it as to what things would need to be in place to make this work. Obviously, there's a trajectory out there that this is moving at a pace.
Thanks, Anne. Yes, I think it is moving at a pace, and I think any information we can get from our sources would be useful. But I think again, just to say that the timescales for submitting our response were very, very short, and it seems to be a sort of common theme. I don't know, Alison, if there's something we can feed back up to government to say it's all very well coming for consultation, but it'd be nice if we had a little bit more notice so we can include more of our board members. So I don't know if that's something we can push on. Damien.
Thank you, Chair. I could have asked this question now or even at item 13. Alison, with regards to the letters and let's call it the noise we and others are making about funding, what else can we do with regards to pushing for more funding, and what are the potential negative impact of where we are with regards to the settlement and the funding that the IJB may be getting in the next few weeks?
I'm happy to kick off, but Hamish may want to come in on some of that as well. I mean, I think we are taking a range of different opportunities that we have, both from, as you'll see, from an IJB perspective. I think the local authority certainly has been also ensuring that they're raising that, as has COSLA. As a group of chief officers, we're taking every opportunity that we have with ministers and colleagues in Scottish Government to raise the challenges and concerns that we have. And I know that the Chief Finance Officer Network have been doing that as well, both about general settlement and in particular in terms of issues such as the real living wage impact and things like that. So it does feel that there are multiple routes in. I would suggest that we're not hearing very much back in terms of what that might mean, and if there is any opportunities for anything more widely. But Hamish, you would have more detail on some of those items potentially. I see you put your hand up.
Thank you. I suppose just to build on that a little bit, the Chief Finance Officer Network, Damien, we've written to and already had a meeting with Scottish Government policy colleagues specifically around the shortfall in funding on the real living wage, which is referenced in the paper 13. We are waiting to hear back in terms of the outcome of some of those discussions. I know, as Alison said, COSLA have been lobbying hard on that as well, and there's been lots of letters went in from various provider organisations. I suppose the only other thing just to add is that there are discussions ongoing, and that's referenced in the paper, between myself and Alison and the two directors of finance. And I'm really unsure of what the final budget offer for the IJB will look like until the council sets its budget later this month. And I know that Alistair presented the paper on the Scottish Budget to Council Executive yesterday. The £2.9 million declining deficit for social care was mentioned as a key pressure, and I know there was a bit of discussion about social care specifically. But I am unsure in terms of what the budget offer for the council will be until the council sets its budget later this month, and then at that point I will know what the final gap looks like for social care. In terms of health, what I can say is that following the Scottish budget, that in the 2% uplift, that it is still within what I would call the sort of normal parameters of about a 2 to 3% savings challenge for the IJB, and with the details still to be flushed out. There's a lot of work ongoing around savings at the minute within the health board, and again, it won't be until later in the month until that becomes a bit clearer. But I suppose just to build on where we've been the last sort of 18 months, challenge is far greater in terms of that financial scale within social care for us in West Lothian, and it's tipped into unprecedented levels of savings this year. 4.8 million savings requirement this year, which was almost double what we had to make last year. And part of that is you can see coming through in that recurring deficit. So yeah, I know that's maybe not what members want to hear, but we get our funding from our two partner organisations, NHS Lothian and West Lothian Council, who, as Alison said, have also been impacted by the late UK government budget, the late Scottish government budget. And it will be the end of this month before things become a bit clearer for me, and happy to take any follow-ups.
No, thank you for that, Hamish. And we need to hear what the truth, not what we want to hear. Absolutely to that. I'm more as concerned as the lateness of everything for us both to make decisions, but also the impact that it's going to have and what we can then do with regards to, dare I say, plans B, C, D, and E and F. We can't control when the money is going to come, when the funding is announced. But I think we're all sitting here expecting it to be as bad as we're discussing. So the question on the finance point is, where do you believe it will be? And then operationally, the service delivery wise, what do we think will be the impact of the budget we are likely to have come March?
I think Damien said, so if I could pick up on a couple of points. I'm hoping that this is not noise. I think what we're trying to do is to pragmatically put together a case that conveys to elected representatives and government the position we now find ourselves in. I'd like to applaud the professionalism of our exec colleagues in sort of helping try and objectively set down the position that we're in. I think we have been over the last few months going through on the development sessions, looking at the sort of options that we might be able to look at. So I think we are trying to take a pragmatic approach, sort of hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst in terms of where we get to. And I think we have a number of options that have been explored. I think as and when the numbers start to solidify, we can then take a look at those options and decide which we are going to have to take pragmatically. But I'm hoping that this board is operating in a very professional, pragmatic way and pulling on as many levers as we can. We're consulting with the public. We're raising the issues with our elected officials and trying to make clear the position we find ourselves in whilst we're trying to deliver services for our community. Yeah,
it's criticism isn't of the board. It's the limitations of what the controls we have.
I think.
It's not. I'm not saying we therefore should, get the pitchforks and march down to Holyrood. It's in seriousness though, is what else can be done? Because let's face it, we have an idea of where we're heading with this, and it is, as we heard at Council Executive this week, and from the head of social policy who's here today, this is potentially catastrophic. It is. Likely. It really is. I know in the previous years we've always discussed, it's not looking great, we're going to have to do this and the other. This, to me, is the worst I've ever seen, potentially, and I don't believe we're going to be wrong with our negative view on where this is going. So it's more a case of what else can be done, and maybe if I could get an answer to what is the potential outcomes that we will face service delivery wise, maybe that will bring us back to focusing on what else can be done to stop it getting there in the first place.
Alison, do you want to pick up on that?
I mean, I think I'll do my best to do that. I mean, I think if nothing changes to the budget offer that we have had, so if nothing changes at the council budget meeting or from NHS Lothian at this point in time, my sense is that we will need to take everything that has been included within the budget consultation. And we had originally gone out with that as what we hoped was going to be a worst case scenario. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And as Joe highlighted at Council Executive this week, which will be available for members to re-listen to, or I'm sure Joe would be able to come back in to describe that. I think Joe did describe what the really significant impacts would be if that was the level of saving that we required. I suppose there are opportunities and conversations that we have, and I suppose for 4 of you, you will be part of that council budget setting process around if there was any additionality that could be provided towards the IJB as part of that process, that would still mean that difficult decisions would need to be made, but would allow us to fully take into account some of the feedback that we've had through the consultation that Sharon will take us through in more detail later on in the agenda, and would allow as board members for that flexibility that often you ask for, Damien, in terms of these were the full range of options and what would we want to take in amongst that. But I think if something doesn't change in our budget offer, there probably won't be any of that flexibility for members. And as Joe had highlighted, the really significant impact that we would face and experience, and that members of our community would face and experience as a result of that.
And that's really why we agreed to go out to consultation in the first place, Damien.
Oh, absolutely. That and the consultation was absolutely the right thing to do. It is, like I say, it's where we're sitting here and what we're looking at. You know, we're part of a board here that's going to make some incredibly tough decisions that will have an impact on a lot of individuals.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's to ensure that every avenue it has been explored and it has been involved, but I don't want to say we can only be effective to so much with regards to asking for more funding. But I don't believe people even out there even understand what is potentially heading down the line here.
Well, I think that's why we have to, as a board, have to continue to keep going with the narrative to make sure that the limitations we're operating under, the choices we have to make, are fully understood. So I think we need to continue with as open and transparent a narrative as possible in order to continue to convey to our community the issues we face and the choices we're going to have to make.
Very much so.
Thank you, Damien.
Thank you, John.
Anne. I was going to raise this as part of some of the subsequent papers, but I suppose reflecting on what I hope to be saying was in line with this discussion. So if I could just come in with some points around the financial situation and where I'm seeing it from a community perspective. I have a real fear of us creating institutionalisation by design because of the financial situation that we are being presented with. And whilst fully recognising that financial reality, I think as we proceed to look at some of these options, we need to be honest of what conscious decisions we're making around policy choice and what does that mean. And although some of the elements of the services we're looking at are described as maybe non-statutory, some of them are mechanisms to allow people to live the life that they choose to live, and some of it is aligned to other acts like Self-Directed Support Act, etc. And it's us being aware of how much of people's rights we would be removing. And it's not by choice, it's by the reality of the financial situation that we're in. So it's really an ask to us as a board to think about that direction we're choosing to go in, and what does that really mean for our community, and where along the line are we institutionalising people in their homes because of the hard choices we're having to make due to the financial situation.
I think, Anne, as long as we continue in the spirit of what we do in West Lothian, to have open and transparent discussions both here and at the development sessions, I think that I'm looking for all members to explore rigorously the choices we have to make, and to make sure that all voices are heard. So I would hope that we continue. I think we've been successful in doing that, certainly over the last 18 months to 2 years, and I would certainly look for that to continue. Thanks, Anne. Mary?
Hi, just to say, just in the last few minutes, that the Provost has called two special meetings, two special budget meetings, the 19th and the 24th of February.
Thanks, Mary. Hopefully there'll be some clarity comes out from those. Thanks. So I realise we're still with Alison's Chief Executive report. I think if I could raise a couple of things. We did at the last meeting agree to, there was a suggestion made that we put an action tracker in. I see that Alison's included actions within her report. Are we happy that that actually satisfies the action tracker item that was mentioned by members? Is anybody unhappy with that as a way to carry on? I think my only other observation, Alison, is that it did take us some time to get the draft letters prepared, and I think it meant that we couldn't do the full consultation with members before we had to get those letters out to elected officials. So I'm just wondering if there was some reason for that, and how do we get slicker at this?
Yeah, apologies for that, Chair. I think it was just with a range of other activities that officers were involved with, particularly around the finalisation of the consultation. It was just a workload pressure issue. So apologies, and we will try and ensure that that doesn't happen. There were obviously a couple of items that we'd asked for decisions for from board members. So just wanted to check that you were content with that. One was around the issuing of the direction, and the other was around the opportunity for other members to be invited to the Audit, Risk and Governance Committee on the 5th of March. So it was just wanting to check before we moved on to Hamish's paper that you were
It's okay. I was
or otherwise to those.
Thank you for keeping me on track, Alison. I was actually going to come back to that. So can I just confirm with members that we're happy with both of those? I think the invitation to members to take up the observer status at the meeting on the 5th of March is a good one, and I would encourage as many as possible to take up that opportunity. And do we have any objections to the issuing of the direction? Fine. Can we note that both of those are agreed? And just checking, I haven't missed anything else, Alison, before we put Hamish in the spotlight. Great, thank you. Hamish, Scottish budget. The floor is yours.
Thank you, John. The paper sets out the implications of the Scottish draft budget for 2026-27 and the implications of that budget for the Immigration Joint Board. At a national level, the draft budget provides modest real terms growth for health and social care and local government. However, the uplifts remain well below the level required to meet rising demand, inflationary pressures and workforce costs. For West Lothian, this means a continuation of the significant financial challenges we've been facing over the last few years. Whilst West Lothian Council have received an increase in core revenue funding for 2026-27 of £12.2 million compared to 25-26, Council still have a significant budget gap of £15.4 million over the next 2 financial years. Specifically for social care, there is additional national funding to support the uplift of the real living wage and increases to free personal and nursing care rates. However, next year, the funding for real living wage does not even cover the cost of these policy commitments. Members will have heard me talk before about how when this extra funding is announced, actually it's extra funding with extra costs attached to it. For real living wage next year, what we're talking about is extra funding that doesn't even cover the cost of policy. COSLA have highlighted this in a lot of work over the last month or so around highlighting this. The national shortfall is estimated at £15 million for adult social care, with a likely approximate £500,000 shortfall for West Lothian. For health, NHS boards will receive a 2% uplift alongside funding for pay settlements. NHS Lothian continues to face a substantial underlying budget gap. As I've already mentioned in questions to the previous paper, further work's ongoing to understand the savings required for NHS Lothian to try and balance its budget, as well as the impact on services delegated to this board. Position for us, unfortunately, remains extremely challenging. We enter next year with no reserves, significant medium-term funding gap, increasing demand across adult health and social care services. On my current assumptions, it remains highly likely that difficult decisions on service prioritisation, including potential capping or stopping of services, will be required to maintain financial sustainability of the IGB. In terms of next steps, the Chief Officer and I will continue that detailed engagement with West Lothian Council and NHS Lothian to try and assess the ongoing impact of the budget. As I've said, West Lothian Council will finalise their budget later this month, and that will give us a concrete budget offer, which will give us our savings target for social care, and then things on the NHS side will be finalised in March for us. As such, I will be bringing a full report on the proposed 2026-27 IGB budget alongside an unupdated medium-term financial outlook for the board on the 24th of March 2026 for approval. Happy to take any questions on any of that, John.
Thank you, Hamish. Any questions or observations for Hamish? Damien.
Thanks again, Chair, and thank you for that again, Hamish. I'm actually going to go back to it, similar to what I asked earlier, so it might be Alison or Joe to come in. With regards to the budget measure to cap services, what could be the operational outcome of that?
Alison?
I think Joe would be best to come. Well, happy to, but Joe, do you want to cover that?
Thank you very much, Chair. Undoubtedly, this is a very difficult concept to even think about, never mind think to how we would implement. But the kind of thinking that we could be progressing would be looking to set caps, financial thresholds to the level of support at home provided for people. We could be applying thresholds and stating that some people who were assessed to need residential care might not be able to enter that care until such time as another person left care. So the concept is that we would be required to try and manage the demand that we have and the complexity of that demand within the budget that is available. And we all know that budget currently does not address the needs and the demands. So it presents significant risk to the people that we are paid to support, and it also presents, and I speak as the Chief Social Work Officer, a significant risk to our statutory responsibilities and also for our practitioners that we will require to ask to deliver such a position. And they and their practice, their individual liability would require to be protected very clearly by instruction from this board or by the council in relation to a policy, because we could not have practitioners practice in a way that was so counter to their basic values and principles that it presented a risk to their continued registration as social work professionals, because we all, including me, still require to be registered as a social worker. So taking forward the concept of capping care, and that's an unfortunate description, but that's the reality, I guess, of what we are talking about here, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe, for that. And if I just carry on a little bit there on that one, Chair. Joe, you mentioned about the statutory services that we're obliged to provide. Can you just be clear with me, Joe? Are we saying that we potentially would not be able to provide our statutory services?
So it's a risk to our statutory responsibilities and duties, and they, for social work, relate largely to our duties to assess need and then our duties to provide services to meet that need. So we would have to take, if we're in this position and we're pursuing a policy position or a framework for practitioners, we would need to have worked out how we were going to manage this process, and we would require to take very, very detailed legal advice on that, because there are particular challenges. So it is largely around our duties to have a range of suitable provisions available to people and to meet assessed need. Our Our framework for meeting assessed need is an eligibility framework that sets our thresholds currently for intervention where there is substantial or critical risks to people's health and well-being. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Joe. And for everyone on the call, myself and Joe didn't plan this question and answer session, but Joe, your answer gave me leading on to my next question very, very nicely. The legal advice, and I'm talking about both IJB as a board, but also the individuals providing the service. Are we at risk, or is there potentially going to be a risk of legal action being taken against both the board and the individuals for the standard of care or the services, shall we say, not being provided because of the decisions that are potentially being made now?
Thank you, Chair. I personally would caution very much about giving the board any legal advice. I couldn't do that, and we would have to get detailed advice around that. There is always a risk that people will take actions against decisions made in any of our interventions, but in terms of the board itself, I'm not sure, and perhaps Alison might prefer to answer that question in relation to legal challenge.
Alison, I just wonder, well, unless you know the answer directly, is it worthwhile taking this offline, coming back with a clear a set of facts around that?
I mean, I think we can do. We're not aware of people necessarily having taken legal action as yet across Scotland, but I think it is probably a matter of time, given some of the decisions that are being taken around Scotland, that something will be challenged. We will obviously, at the point any measures are coming forward from officers for IJB members to make decisions on, ensure that that is laid out if there are any threats to our ability to deliver on statutory responsibilities and what that would mean. We wouldn't, at the point suggestions were coming forward, not be really clear and explicit in terms of what that might mean, both in terms of professional advice that Joe might give, legal advice around some of the measures, and also we would be ensuring, as always, that full equality impact assessments and consumer duty assessments were undertaken for any of the measures. So I suppose as we're not coming forward with measures at this point, we can't be explicit around what that would mean, and we don't have our final offer to know whether it will put us into breach as this point in time, but we will obviously ensure that members are aware of any risks and they can obviously then either make decisions or not on that basis.
Thanks, Alison. I think it's probably worth exploring so that we actually have some the right information rather than speculating on this call. Thanks, Damien. Anne.
Yeah.
You're on mute, Anne.
I was off mute and put myself back on. Thanks, Joe. I've got 2 points. Whilst we talked about the people receiving the care and also looking after the staff and their professional position in all this, another group, and you'll not be surprised that I say this, where's the then impact on unpaid carers? Because some of this will land on the shoulders of unpaid carers, and it's having that level of awareness, what that looks like. How are we then going to support the unpaid carers as opposed to some of the other people that are maybe going to have to be less involved? The other point is around our statutory duties. Our statutory duties are about outcomes, so it's always looking under that umbrella where we're eroding outcomes, and for outcomes that are already agreed with people, how are we picking up what those are? How are we understanding the impact on those outcomes when we've got less money to support those outcomes? Never mind the ones that are coming up the track as new outcomes that we can't meet.
I think I'd go back to what we said previously, Anne, and I think that is every decision we make, we have to fully think out. We need to get all of the information. We're looking to our executive colleagues to sort of bring us the various options and the everything we've done up until now has had a strong impact assessment, and I wouldn't look for that to change at all. In fact, it's much more serious that we do that. And again, I'd be hoping that we'd, as the voice of the unimpaired care community, then I'd expect you to be at the centre of making sure that we understand what the potential impacts could be. Thank you. Peter.
Yeah, thanks. Just to follow on from that discussion, you've kind of covered most of what I was going to say, but in terms of the legal requirements, I know we're going to look at that separately, but one thought I had was that and I think it was Joe or Alison who alluded to this already, is that this is going to happen somewhere in Scotland, and the legal judgment, wherever it happens, will immediately kick in across the whole of the country and have implications. So it would be sod's law that West Lothian happened to be the one, but I think we need to have our ear to the ground about what's happening, and I'm sure you do, Alison, in terms of what's happening elsewhere in Scotland. That if it does end up in a judicial review somewhere of some kind, then we need to bear that in mind in terms of all our decisions. The second thing I was going to say was, having come from Edinburgh, one of the issues there was the question about what seemed like the soft options for making reductions in funding, and that was the charity sector. But the argument against that, which was strongly put and had some impact, was that if we don't invest in prevention, then we might get through next year, but we won't get through the year after and the year after that. So the decisions we have, I mean, I'm just stating the obvious, actually, which is the decisions we have are going to be very, very difficult to work through because of the implications of making the wrong decision. Might solve one year, but we've built up a problem for the following years as a result. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Alison?
Would acknowledge all of that. And I mean, as I said, we will do really detailed equalities impact assessment, Consumer Duty, to ensure that we have done our best to lay out all of those risks and challenges. I think that's been an issue for a number of us for a number of years, Peter, in terms of it can feel that the prevention area is the easier bit to make decisions in, but that long-term impact of those decisions is really challenging. So all of the issues that you've flagged, both in terms of statutory responsibilities, role of carers, those knock-on impacts for the longer term in terms of some of the decisions we made, would be spelled out in any budget paper that comes forward in March for your consideration and discussion at that point in time. What I would say as officers is I think it's not going to be easy things for us to come forward with. It's not around us. We won't be able to gloss this and make it easy. There will be difficult decisions. Even if we get a really good budget settlement, I can't see that it will wipe out the requirement for any level of savings. So there will still be challenging decisions to make. And as officers, we will do our best to present that information in a way that allows you the time and space to make those decisions.
Thank you, Alison. I have no doubt of that. I think what I'm hoping is a continued delivery of all of the options in the way you have been up until now. So I think in some ways we're caught in between a number of statutory requirements. The statutory requirement to deliver a balanced budget combined with the statutory requirements we have in terms of delivering services. And we're moving into an area which we've expected for some time where really difficult decisions have to be made. Tom.
Thanks, Chair. It's not so much a question, but a general comment on it. I don't know how many pitchforks that Damien's got to go down the Royal Mile or whatever, but I can only suggest that we don't do that, because that just potentially could put some other pressures on the health service should anything go awry in that type of situation. But there are times when you think, what do you do? We've been here time after time, I have to say, and to read Hamish's paper, it's the stark situation where things which are taken as the norm, the living wage for contracted services, Scottish Government are not providing the money to do that. And in other venues, I hear the need to look after people who are disadvantaged and whatever. And here is a government who's decided not to fully fund that and I think they are expecting others to try and do that. But I think we need to we have two funding partners, the Council and the National Health Service, Lothian. Our direct funder is Scottish Government based in Edinburgh, and we need to recognise and point out that the financial situation we're in and the decisions we're having to make is a direct consequence of their decisions and their deliberations and calculations. When I hear Jo, she's mentioning delivery services to manage care by capping care or thresholds or rationing. We have an elderly population, and surely we're not heading for a situation where we're providing care on the basis of filling a dead person's shoes or bed and not fulfilling statutory services. That's stark reality of where we are. I'm going to be very blunt. I'm not taking personal responsibility for that. That decision. That decision is Edinburgh, and I'm going to continually point the finger in Edinburgh that they need to change their attitude. I will have to make the decisions legally, but I'm not taking personal responsibility. And those who have made that decision, they need to stand up and say they accept what the Scottish Government has said. We've got zero reserves. We've had £10 million clawed back out of reserve by Scottish Government. These are choices in Edinburgh, and if there's legal action because we don't or we can't deliver statutory services, we need to say it in stark terms. This is not a decision taken by this board, lightly or not, but we have to make these decisions. And I said to a colleague earlier on, somebody needs to wake up and smell the coffee, because you can't, there's no rationale to what's going on in this situation. And that stark decision coming up to our budget is it's damning, colleagues. And I'm not prepared to get the finger pointed at me that I made these decisions, because we had the decision in the last budget of, and I'm going to mention it, Rosemount Cafe. What we've now got before us is out of all proportion to that situation, totally out of all proportion. And certain local politicians who campaigned on that, keeping that facility open, should hang their head in shame when they consider what we're now going to have to consider. It pales into insignificance, and I don't say that lightly, for the stark reality we've got. And that is what we need to be as a board continually saying, this madness has to stop. And I don't think at our budget it will stop. We may be able to put some bandages on and stick in plasters, maybe, but reality has to sink in somewhere else, and they start making the right decisions. Ramble over. Thank you, colleagues.
Thanks, Tom. I think I share much of that view with you, and I think colleagues do as well. But for me, this is about us continuing to operate as a board and to continue to make the position we find ourselves in as clear as possible. The reason we went to consultation was understanding that we were moving to this territory. The reason we've produced letters is part of that. We need to continue this open, transparent narrative, and we need to continue to work as a team in order to ensure that we do the best to provide what we can for our community, whilst flagging up the issues to government of where we find ourselves in. I think we've made our position very clear to both of our funders, and they understand that as well. But ultimately, you're right, we need to communicate this to government as well as to the public, because I think the public need to be clear on this situation as well. My rant over. Stevie, go ahead, mate.
Thanks, John. I just want to come back to Tom and say, Tom, I understand where you're coming from. I think For people who are going to be impacted by these decisions, though, i.e. staff, service users' families, you guys are the first level of democracy that they will come after. You are the guys that we will going to have to protest against and campaign against and say, you are the ones that are making the decision on this funding. We then look to you to take that message to the Scottish Government or wherever you think it should go. If you think you have to get more money to appease the people who are going to see you as the first level of democracy, and that's where they're going to come for.
Stevie, I accept that, and I wouldn't like to be seen as an appeaser, because on this situation, that could be actually argued that because decisions have been made in the past, that's been appeasement, but that's where we've got to now. I would urge people who think that I'm the first place to come to. It's not. There's a short bus ride or a train ride through Edinburgh to say you're the ones who've got the purse strings. They have to do it. I accept we're the first line, Stevie. I do accept that, because folks stop me in the street and different things. But where do we get the additional resource to do it? And that might be a slight difference of who's the best persons to change the ultimate decision. But Scottish Government have given their budget and allocated money to us and said get on with it. And yeah, I'll make the hard decisions that I need to be, but I don't want to, Stevie. But people need to recognise where the decisions are being made, and it's not necessarily in our council chamber. We're having to deal with that as a reality now.
I'd like to call time on this conversation. I think it's incredibly important. I think it underscores what we've been saying for at least the last 6 months, if not longer, that we are moving into a situation where some very serious decisions are going to have to be made. But I come back to the point I'd like to make is that we need to operate as a team. We need to explore every single aspect of each decision we have to make, and we need to make it very clear to our staff, our community, our patients, and to government why we are having to make these decisions and the constraints we're operating under. I don't think we are appeasing anybody. We are trying to take the most professional and pragmatic way of trying to do the best with what we've got. I think back to Joe's point, I think we have to ensure that the professionalism of our staff is also recognised, and and understand the constraints that they're operating under as well. I believe that the only way that we can really move through this is for us to continue to operate the way we have been, and that is as an integrated and coherent team. Around this table, we are the West Lothian IJB. So irrespective of where we come from, I think we are collectively trying to do the best for our community. We have been up until this point, and I would strongly suggest that we continue in that mode. It's the best way for us to serve the community that we're representing. I'll move us on to the next agenda item, please. That's the Obesity Medicines Specialist Initiation Pathway. Fiona, you have the spotlight.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And thank you to my colleagues in Mid Lothian who actually produced this paper, which is develop a specialist initiation pathway for obesity management with medicines. I'm going to just give some slides, share some slides with you, some background to this. But in fact, the paper was presented, I presented it to the IJB's Strategic Planning Group on the 15th of January for discussion. But actually today, I'm hoping that you'll make a decision on what I'm going to propose. Someone's sharing the slides for me. Thank you very much. I'll move to the next slide then. So this is GLP-1, and you'll realise why we use an acronym like we do in a lot of healthcare. This is a glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor agonist. It mimics a hormone. It causes people to feel nauseated, reduces their intake of food, and has been found to be a very successful medicine in managing type 2 diabetes and in more recently in weight management. It's been on the East Region pharmacy formulary. That means general practitioners have been able to use this drug since February for the benefit of weight loss. And our GP primary care pharmacy committee agreed this. And so it's a pathway that involves the weight management team, which is dietitians, psychologists, and exercise facilitators. And it's in collaboration with independent prescribers, pharmacists, and with oversight from general practice. It's to support 2 cohorts, over 500 people being prescribed this medication. This is a medication that many people are now purchasing independently through private contractors. It is an additional tool in helping people who have severe obesity. So its aim is for people with a body mass index of 38 and an illness that is related to their weight. So that could be coronary heart disease, diabetes. So I want to just see if I can present to you the considerations for its use in West Lothian and support this work that will be system-wide throughout the whole of Lothian. Next slide. In context, 58% of the adults living in Lothian live with a weight problem, some of those very severe, and those impacting on our health and social care. 40,000 people in Lothian live with type 2 diabetes, 5.9% of the population, and in fact, that's more than the Scottish average. Diabetes is one of our biggest health costs in terms of blindness, kidney dialysis. And so it's really important that we actually manage people with severe weight problems in a very professional manner. Next slide. And this is just a bit about the weight management service. I don't know if you know, but I was a dietitian by background before I took on the Chief HP post. So a wee bit to just let you know that the weight management service focuses on diabetes prevention, trying to take type 2 diabetes into remission, educating people with type 2 diabetes to self-manage, supporting women through pregnancy who are diagnosed with diabetes. And we know that if women are overweight and diagnosed with that diabetes, within 5 years, they actually become diabetic. So there's different levels of the weight management service. Tier 2 for the sort of light touch, Tier 3 for the more complex. And there's a children's healthy weight management service. And there's support for the fertility service, where we know weight can have an impact on women's ability to conceive. And it includes clinical psychology, because as we know, obesity links very strongly with binge eating and an eating disorder. Next slide. This is what it looks like. There are 2 types of drugs, one semaglutide and one tyrosopeptide. Probably got those wrongly pronounced, but they're injections that people would give themselves once per week. And it would need to be titrated up to a level that was having an impact on people's weight to the maximum dose. Next slide. This shows you the impact of this medication on helping people lose weight. And it's certainly the Mounjaro product next to the sleeve gastrectomy. That's surgery, bariatric surgery. It is almost having a similar impact on weight. Next slide. This is the reason for having the supported pathway for people on this drug. Big impact on losing weight actually seems to be that it reduces people's muscle mass if they do not change their eating habits or their exercise and physical activity. And clearly that would be leading us to people then at risk of falls if their muscle mass depletes. So it's important that we do have a multidisciplinary approach to introducing this drug in Lothian. Next slide. Resource implications for introducing the drug already. Many of our general practitioners in West Lothian are prescribing this drug, but this identifies the workforce that would be needed to support the introduction of the medication, with our pro rata 144 patients in West Lothian in the first year. It is £47,000 this year or next year, our financial year, and at a current cost of 23. But the weight management service are already looking to see how they can secure this resource from other funding. The decision hasn't been made on this funding application they've made yet, so this would be the start cost for us as an IJB. Next slide. This is what they've been working with. They've been working to secure funding through collaboration with the armed forces and looking for research funding to support this. But the decision today, without knowing what their extra funding has been, will be for West Lothian to fund £47,000 next year and £23,000 recurring to support the workforce of the specialist pathway. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Any questions for Fiona? Amjad. You're on. No.
Yep. Yeah, thanks very much, and thanks, Fiona. I'm just going to repeat the questions because I heard this at Midlothian IJB, so it was similar questions there. First of all, it is a good thing. There's no doubt with for people who with a BMI of 38 and existing other problems, that this can be a game changer for them. And as you quite rightly pointed out, the number of people with type 2 diabetes is rising exponentially throughout the UK, and this is causing its own problems. However, there's two things. Obviously, one is the cost, as you've just mentioned, and if this is not funded centrally, as we've already been talking about services and cutting back of services, if this is not funding appropriately by Scottish Government, then I think this just adds to the litany of problems that IJBs will have then to be able to find the money for this additional treatment. The second point was, at the time that it was presented at Midlothian, there was no shared care agreement in place. Even though it's been agreed at the GPPC, the GP subcommittee has not agreed to an appropriate shared care arrangement. So that in itself then is also an issue. And also the workload obviously impact on our staff within primary and community care. So although, yes, the weight management service needs additional staff, I think what's not in the paper is what are the potential implications on our staff outside of the weight management service. So those were just the 2 points. Thank you.
Thanks, Amjad. If I can take questions from Mary and Dave. Oh, crikey, and Peter as well. Hamish, can I leave you for a minute to come in and talk about the money in a minute? Mary.
Thank you. My question is solely about the medication, and I was wondering if the medication, has it been proved that it works? And what happens when you stop taking the medication? Does the weight come back on and cause further budget resources to be used?
Thanks, Mary. Dave.
You want me to answer those questions?
I'm just going to bring them all to you in one big one, Fiona, if that's all right. In an attempt to try and get through it quickly. Dave, what's your point, mate?
Well, my point would be, what's the implications starting it on the other, you've seen the advantages, but what savings do you make in the rest of the services by implementing this in the first place? Is there a cost analysis being done to say, look, if we do it this way, then potential savings are through the rest of the system X, Y, or Z?
Thanks, Dave. Peter?
It's actually the same point Dave's just made, actually, which is that, unfortunately, we're not allowed to work on an economic basis, but the savings potentially could be enormous, in terms of hospital admission avoidance and so on. It's just that the timing of these things is never quite predictable. So people don't buy it. But in the old days when we used to talk about economic appraisal and things like this, it would definitely do. It would be wonderful to have a medicine that resolved the issues of obesity. I'll just stop there. Thanks.
Thanks, Peter. Fiona, over to you.
Thank you for answering that, Peter. The GP costs and implications for primary care. I have discussed this with our clinical director. He is supportive of this pathway, but it would be good to have support from the committees and GP subcommittee particularly. I think we know, and in fact Carol probably able to tell you, I think we know that the GPs in West Lothian are already using this medication and supportive of it. So that's all I can say on that one. In terms of its effectiveness, it is extremely effective, Mary, in terms of weight loss, rapid weight loss. That's why we need some of that combined pathway with dietitians and exercise facilitators to ensure that the patients are titrated on the right amount of drug. The latest data shows that yes, patients regain if they come off it. It is a drug for life, and we know that it has long-term coronary heart disease effects. It reduces impact of the risk of coronary heart disease, but we also know recently, in fact, Carol shared the paper with me, that it also has increased the risk of pancreatitis and gallstones needing urgent surgery. So it doesn't come without risks, but it is very effective in addressing obesity. That's why we're aiming to use it on those people who are most at risk of their obesity and what it does to their health and their quality of life.
Can I bring? Sorry.
Enough.
Can I bring Carol in? I got the impression she could add to your argument.
Thank you. So absolutely, I think this is why the paper's coming, because although it's on formulary and a decision has been made at formulary committee, we haven't yet got that pathway agreed so that a group of patients, the same group of patients across the whole of Lothian, can access this in the same way regardless of where they are, which practice they're with. So although Fiona has said there's some prescribing of it already, that isn't happening routinely and it's not happening consistently. So this is starting to try to address that so that we've got a specific cohort of patients that we're going to try and make it accessible for all of that patient group. In terms of the benefits and the economics, that assessment is done at the Scottish Medicines Consortium. So they will review the clinical evidence available for the medication, and they will also do the economic modelling. So that includes a bit about the benefits of the medication across the whole system. So what are the cardiovascular benefits? What are the specific weight loss benefits? So that wider picture is taken into account. And they also do some modelling in there for any risks that are associated with the medication and the likely economics associated with that as well. So at the end of that, there is a cost-benefit analysis, and
for new medications, there's usually an additional cost. But because it has been approved for use by the SMC, then we can be assured that economic modelling has been done and the cost benefit is deemed to be at an appropriate level for use in Scotland. So all of that economic modelling has happened already. And then it goes then through our formulary committee, so they then agree that the evidence that was reviewed by the SMC is going to be equivalent to what we would see in our Lothian population. So again, that kind of bit of review and assessment and modelling will have been looked at for Lothian patients as well.
Thank you, Carol. Hamish, could you wait and just bring Tom in, and then we'll come to the money. Tom?
Yeah, when I saw Hamish going up, I was seeing all the cash signs going up. So yeah, but you mentioned about side effects. Running parallel with that as a risk, is there increased screening of the individuals on the basis that that's what they're being prescribed? Indeed, if there's tests to try and pick it up, or is it just the case of we wait to see and develop and then we need to react at that time? So if you're on something for life, well, that could be a long time. So when are you waiting to see if that side effect, you actually get it? Is there a mechanism to pick up on that?
Colleague Carol will answer that from a pharmacy point of view.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, I was going to come in. So with all new medications, when they're newly being introduced, they're called black triangle medications. So what that means is there's more scrutiny, I guess, on any side effects. So we're looking for additional reporting to be done on any side effects people are experiencing, and then all of that will be brought together to give an idea of what kind of side effects might appear in the population. So as Fiona has said, we have just recently, so just today, we've had an Medicines Health Regulations Agency update on extra vigilance, I guess, for this side effect, so pancreatitis. There's no specific monitoring in addition that we need, but when we're introducing a medication for a new patient, there is extra advice that is being recommended that healthcare professionals will provide to patients to ask them to watch for things like intense pain, and that if they do experience intense pain, then they should immediately ask for healthcare review. So there's not any specific monitoring, and we will probably become more aware of more side effects as we use it in more and more patients. The advice that we have had is that a very small number of patients will get this severe side effect, but because of the severity of it, it's just something we need to be aware of. So, yeah.
Okay, right, thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Hamish.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for your patience, Hamish. I imagine you're going to talk to us about money.
So the costs of this are included in the current financial planning assumptions. So before, when I was talking about our sort of usual 2 to 3% savings parameters, this is included in our prescribing growth figures for next year. So we're already factoring in requirement to make savings to pay for this. And as Fiona's mentioned, there's an initial opportunity of funding for staffing costs here. I suppose, John, as well, the other thing is just to note that this is a pilot. The report notes that there'll be a further report in a few months' time evaluating this. And so to Amjad's point, my understanding is that weight management will do the setting up and getting people settled on the medications, and then they're looking to general practice in terms of maintenance stage, and there is support from GP Sub around that, with agreements still to be finalised. So I suppose, John, just to be clear to the board, this is a pilot around cohorts 1 and 2. And to Peter's point about the economic case, I think if you had non-recurring funding, one-off funding, and you were looking to really make a difference and do something around prevention, I would be saying to the Scottish Government that this is something, you should be going big on in terms of that economic case, benefits for the whole population across health and social care. But this initial proposal is a pilot, so in cohorts 1 and 2, and which Fiona's already described in good detail. The costs are included in the current financial planning projections.
Thanks, Hamish. Have we taken a look at the potential benefits of this further down the line in terms of planning? Because if what everybody is saying is right, we should start to be saving in other areas as a result of prescribing this medication. Have we got any view on what that might be?
That work's ongoing, John, and was the defining cohorts 1 and 2 has been moving. What cohorts being for and what the potential rollout, what the financial implications look like are still to be finalised. And I suppose the other thing about the economic argument, saying you're going to save bed days as an example, that's not a cash gain. What you need to do is to close wards off the back of it. So I suppose that's a bit about health economics and financial reality, sometimes not going together in terms of some of that demand growth. So I would expect that fuller economic appraisal for the the third and fourth cohorts to be part of the updated paper that comes back to this board, along with an evaluation of the pilot.
Okay. Thanks, Hamish. In the interest of time, we have the decision to make on this paper in terms of taking this initiative forward. So on the basis that this is a pilot, funding is already in our costings for next year. Does anybody object to taking this forward? Can I take this then that we're approving this and moving it and making the decision in the affirmative?
Indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Fiona. You can go and have a decompress now. Last area for decision, we've got the Independent Advocacy Strategic Plan. Lorna, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So Alison mentioned under the Chief Officer report, the Right to Advocacy report, in which the Mental Welfare Commission for Scotland published a number of recommendations, which included that all health and social care partnerships and local authorities should work collaboratively to ensure that a strategic advocacy plan was developed and implemented for a period of 3 years. So we published our first independent advocacy strategic plan for 2024 to 2027 in September 2024. And that plan outlined the statutory responsibilities of NHS boards and local authorities. So that's a joint statutory responsibility to provide access to independent advocacy for specific groups of people, and the primary legislation placing that duty on us is the Mental Health Care and Treatment Scotland Act. So this report is the first annual review of that plan, with a brief update on where we are with the Advocacy Strategic Plan action plan we set out in that original report. It renews the partnership's commitment to working with families, friends, carers, users of advocacy services, staff providers and wider partners. And I'll just touch on the sort of current provision in West Lothian as well. So we commission the Mental Health Advocacy Project for people with mental health and addiction issues. They also pick up spot purchasing for unpaid carers. EAR's independent advocacy service for adults with learning disability, autism, physical disability, acquired brain injury, older people who have survived a stroke, and people who are, including people who are detained under the Mental Health Act or undergoing guardianship processes or measures under the Adult Support and Protection Scotland Act. We also have Who Cares Scotland, who are commissioned to provide independent advocacy to children and young people who are looked after or where there are child protection processes in place. So section 4 of the report sets out some very high level numbers of what our commissioned advocacy providers are providing. And some of the challenges that they have reported in their annual monitoring to us. So for MHAP and EARS, the main reason for referrals continues to be referrals under the Mental Health Care and Treatment Scotland Act and referrals under the Adults with Incapacity Act. Providers are now reporting, and this is a fairly new thing, that they are operating with a waiting list. They're seeing higher complexity in the issues that people are coming to them requiring support. So that is making that process more time consuming. And some of this is related to reductions in other services. So they're seeing issues around housing shortages and waiting lists as well. The providers feedback to us on information on unmet need in West Lothian, and this is set out in 4.11 of the report. So unpaid carers having access to more than that limited short-term spot purchase input, people with without disabilities going through adult protection processes, people of minority ethnic backgrounds without disabilities, people requiring translation or interpreter services, people requiring robust support through self-directed support, including children and their families, and children entitled to advocacy under the Mental Health Act. A full update on progress against the action plan is attached at Appendix 1, and I won't go through, I'm conscious of time, I won't go through every action verbatim, but if I could just pick up on a few of the bits of progress. So when we were engaging on the plan, we recognised there was a bit of feedback from Anne and others that there was a lack of transparency around that support for unpaid carers. So we have reviewed that process and we have published it on the website, and I'm working with Carers of West Lothian and the SDS Forum to try and improve that transparency and I suppose expectation setting as well for unpaid carers. You'll note that a couple of the actions haven't started yet. The contracts for the adult independent advocacy providers have been extended to March 2028 to align with the current strategic planning cycle. So it's intended that we'll do a comprehensive needs assessment for all of those independent advocacy offerings as part of that the next strategic plan process. So I'll pause there, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Lorna. And you very accurately determined that we're running a bit short of time because of my terrible chairmanship. So have we got any questions or observations for Lorna? Anne.
Thanks, Lorna. It's just a point to note, and I personally think it's maybe important. Under 2.1, you rightly say the primary legislation is the act that you've stated, but I just feel it's also worthwhile citing the updated 215 Act changes, so that we're cited on what that Act's really doing around advocacy as well. Well, the amendments that are contained in the 2015 update. So that's just a point. It's just for consideration. Obviously there's still gaps, and it's just really to highlight from my point of view, we really need to see movement on some of those gaps. But I'm also aware that's against the backdrop of the budget situation that we're in. And so it's just keeping highlighting that we had the gaps when the budget wasn't as bad, and what are they going to be like when we go into this next round of financial instability. So I just wanted to talk about that. And the other thing is, we talk about the spot purchasing, but I do wonder if there's some kind of conflict of interest in there, in that despite spot purchases being agreed, they're still at the discretion of staff within the Health and Social Care Partnership.
Thank you, Anne. Lorna, do you want to come back on that?
So the spot purchasing arrangement, we did review that process to make sure that we understood exactly how that's working at the moment, and to be assured that that was the right process. What happens is a referral comes into the provider, and they make a recommendation to the partnership. That is really just the formality. So we sign off that spot purchase based solely on the sort of expert professional opinion of the advocacy provider. They are not obligated under their sort of primary contract to take spot purchase agreements, and because they are prioritising that statutory business, the cases that they will take forward for unpaid carers are very much those who they deem to need advocacy. So it's likely that there will be some sort of vulnerability there that means that person struggles to speak or advocate for themselves, or to navigate that system. So I suppose we trust the providers to make that decision around need, and the partnership just signs that off. So that's the process as it stands at the moment.
Thanks, Lorna. I think the key point, Anne, is we need to keep getting your views and input to continue this dialogue. And I think the point you're making is the point that we've gone through the meeting today, is that we have difficult choices to make, and we're having to do more and more with less and less. So again, back to the points I think we've thrashed through quite well today. Any more points for Lorna? Thank you, Lorna. Thank you very much for the report. You're asking us to note the statutory responsibilities, note that the plan was agreed in September, key observations and challenges, progress update against the action plan, which I think you've talked us through, and agree that this plan remains fit for purpose, which I think it does. Do we have agreement, or do we have anybody who disagrees with the recommendations in this paper?
John, can I just ask if Lorna answers the point about adding in the 2015 part of the 2003 Act?
Lorna, can you take a look at that, please?
Yeah, happy to have a look at that.
Super, thank you. If we can record that. Sorry, Anne. Yeah, you were absolutely right. Thank you. We take all the recommendations. Thank you for the report, Lorna. And moving on to the next item. Chief Social Work Annual Report. Joe, as always, it seems every time you bring a report, we're time constrained. Sorry, yes, go.
You've missed the pharmacy first and prescribing paper that was also for decision that you have on the paper.
Right, but it's on my agenda, on the revised agenda. It's down after the.
Sorry, yes, it's me. I've got the wrong agenda up. I'm sorry, John. I'm interrupting unnecessarily.
That's okay. I think Tom was right to make sure we didn't get confused on the agenda. I'm also conscious of time, so I have a suspicion we might overrun a little bit. So I hope, again, I apologise to everybody. My chairmanship is shocking. So back to Joe. Joe, it seems that we always seem to give you hardly any time at all. You're always up against the time pressure for what is almost certainly a very comprehensive, detailed and an impressive report. So can I ask you to please try and summarise as much as possible, but also give you time to do this justice?
Thank you, Chair. I think for me, in light of our conversations earlier, I would particularly like to focus on some of the positives, the good practice and good performance that is illustrated in this annual Chief Social Work Officer report for the year up to the 31st of March 2025. And I think I particularly would like to flag the positive results from the Care Inspectorate's review inspection of adult support and protection arrangements in West Lothian following a process in 2022 that identified some significant issues with our key processes. I think also an incredible positive remains our continuing ability to meet people who need care at home support and address that demand, as well as our mental health officer team, whose performance was really good over the reporting year with a full complement of MHOs, and that position is not always across the rest of Scotland. So we're really appreciative of that. And just noting the positive feedback as well from our families and service users benefiting from adult support and day services. There are a range of ongoing improvements, redesign programmes that are referenced in the report. I won't particularly go through all of them, nor will I touch again on the significant financial pressures that were experienced during that reporting year, because the IJB was fully aware through regular reporting of these. And the position on workforce again is positive, set out at section 4, with not experiencing significant difficulties in terms of recruitment, and of course our work to encourage students to come to West Lothian for their learning, our supports of our newly qualified social workers. So the looking ahead report section of the report, I suppose we are in that place. We're talking about all the pressures around trying to manage our budgets to their availability, and with no anticipated abatement really of the demand and complexities that people are experiencing in their lives and that we are trying to support them with. And I think at the last IJB, Alison presented a Chief Officer report which had the professional leagues assessments of risk around that position. I won't repeat any of that, and I've already touched on some of these risks when asked about them today. So I think for myself, I suppose I just want to also stress, which I didn't say earlier, and I think it is important, that in anything we present to the board, we understand the decision making, the very difficult decisions, that we will assess and identify any possible mitigations, Chair, that we can find to counter the impact. I think the most risky situations are when the level of mitigations are not sufficient to address all of these. So the only thing I would want to end on is really a very simple point, I think, today. At no point more than now that we need to acknowledge, I think, the work of our social workers and social care workers in West Lothian. They make a difference to people's lives, and I would just like to thank them for their work. So happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Joe, thank you very much for that, and I would echo that on behalf of the board. The thanks to the entire service for the work that they do. I think you're also right to highlight the good news and the things that we do well, rather than, we've focused today a lot on the hard choices and the financial constraints that are under, but we should not forget that actually your service and in fact all of the services of the IGB do an awful lot of good for our community, and we should really recognise that. So I think, as always, this is a very comprehensive report, And thanks to you and your team for pulling it together. And also thank you for summarising it so succinctly. Any questions or observations for Joe? Anne?
As well as the good things that Joe's already covered, I just wanted to say thank you for the notes in the report about the work around young carers and the rise in referrals and young carer statements. I mean, that's a really good thing for our carers in West Lothian.
Thank you, Anne. Peter?
Just following my own interest, I noticed that you've commented on the new social work system for recording information. Is there any indications informally about whether in fact it is making a difference and that people are finding recording information easier with that single system, or is it too early to say? Thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the difficulties with the implementation of our new social work database is not necessarily the system itself, but I think, Chair, we probably underestimated the level of resource that's required to have the system utilised to its benefit, and that's a great focus for us, and we've had to sort of dedicate resource to do that now, and we probably should have done that from the very beginning. But we're also, I think, looking at a range of digital and AI solutions and tools that will also potentially help our practitioners and managers manage in the world that we're in. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. And yeah, Stevie.
Hey, just a quick comment, John. I just want to thank Joe again for remembering the staff in all of this, who do a fantastic job. Despite all the resource issues and the constraints that we have these days, I think we still deliver fantastic services, and I want to thank Joe for reminding people that the staff are still doing that to a high level. So thanks again.
Thanks, Stevie. Yeah, I think, as said already, I think we as a board echo that. And I think if I can also say, Joe, if we can continue to work with you and your service and have the continued open and frank discussions, I think the more we understand the issues and the problems that you face, then the more, we can understand the impact of any decisions that we have to make, irrespective of how difficult they are. So I'd like to thank you also for your strong collaboration over the past year. Anything else for Joe? We're being asked to note the contents of this comprehensive report, the annual report. Note that this was reported was presented to West Lothian Council on the 18th of November, and note that this has also been submitted as required to the Scottish Government Office of the Chief Social Work Advisor. Can I take that as all agreed by the board? Super, thank you very much. Thank you. Sharon, consultation. I think you've included everything. I don't think there's anything else we ever needed to know about the consultation or the response. Very comprehensive. Over to you.
Thanks, John. We wanted it to be as comprehensive. That's what we said to people that we would do, which is why we've included that level of information. I suppose the purpose of the report is really to give the board the kind of update in relation to the findings that we got from our engagement, and has been highlighted through Hamish's reports over the last while, and also in the conversation that we've had today. We are facing a significant budget gap over the next 2 years, and I suppose the consultation was really part of the information that the board sought to help you to make those particular decisions that you're going to have to do at budget setting. I suppose we did want to highlight through the consultation the financial challenges that the board faces, and also the financial challenges that we've faced over the last number of years. That this isn't in isolation, this isn't something that's just happened this year, but there's been a number of years when we've had to make significant savings, and the impact that that has on the delivery of services, the impact on our service users, and also, as Susie has rightly said, the impact on our staff. What would have been clear to make sure that people are aware of through the engagement that we've had is that the board has not at this point in time made its decision, and it won't do that until the March meeting of the board to set the budget. The consultation was really designed to explain those the pressures, but also to give a bit of an overview in terms of the demand that we face in relation to the delivery of our services, and also to set out the role and responsibilities of the IJB. And we very much take on the chin that this is quite a difficult concept for people in relation to where does the IJB sit in relation to the council and also to NHS Lothian, where's the beginning and the end of that. So we've tried to do that, and also to provide some transparency on how health and social care services in West Lothian are funded and how they're delivered. So through the consultation, we really sought to better understand people's views on the proposed saving measures that were articulated, and we highlighted those within the consultation documents. But we also wanted to understand the level of impact that the implementation of any of those proposals would have on service users, their families, unpaid carers, etc. We also wanted to understand whether there were any changes that could be made to reduce negative impacts or make the proposals more acceptable, and whether there were any suggestions that people had that we hadn't really thought about. So the approach and the summary of the results of the engagement are set out in Appendix 1 that's included with this report. As part of the engagement activity that we took out a range of approaches to try to make sure we maximised our reach. We worked very closely with our partners, both Voluntary Sector Gateway and also Carers West Lothian, to try to reach some more hard to reach groups of people. We did try to promote the survey online and to raise awareness through that online portal. We did distribute paper copies because we'd recognised, and the board was very clear, that we wanted to make sure we reduced digital exclusion as much as possible. We did have a couple of pop-up engagement events in both the East in the West locality, and we engaged with staff across the Health and Social Care Partnership. We put posters in a range of different areas across West Lothian, including community centres, GP surgeries, etc. And we had a QR code on those so that it was easy to get the link back to the survey. And also we looked at the consultation materials being shared with our commission providers. And again, as in there are measures that relate to how we would do that to try to get the broadest reach in relation to people who would be using health and social care services. In relation to specifically adult day services, there was a range of different measures that the service took to try to make sure that people were informed on what that looks like, and that's articulated within the report. We also received a targeted submission from EAR's advocacy service, where they engaged with service users of adult day services, and we included that. We sought their permission to include that. We thought it was important to have that included within the document so people can see what's been said from people who are using their services through that independent advocacy organisation. So the consultation was launched on 28th of October and it ran for 6 weeks. In total, we received 369 responses to the consultation, which for this form of engagement, we felt that was actually quite a broad response. That's not to say that we've not learned lessons from how we want to engage with people going forward. I think there's lots of different lessons that we would want to take and do things differently. One of the criticisms that was come back from people was that there was a confusion between the timing of our consultation and also the council's consultation. So we'd want to make sure that if we were doing this again, we would do that better. The report outlines the respondent profile. That's included in the report on pages 5, 6 and 7. I just want to highlight that 52% of the people who completed the survey and responded recognised themselves as unpaid carers. And I suppose that ties into some of the conversations that we've had both on the budget and some of the points that Anne's highlighted through today. The collective responses to individual questions are set out in pages 9 to 13 of Appendix 1, and there is a further appendix in Appendix 3 that provides a little bit more detail in that, just conscious that people might want to see a little bit more detail in relation to that. We also gave respondents the opportunity to provide free text responses to a number of questions. Those are outlined on page 14 of the appendix. We received 1,029 comments, and those are included in Appendix 2. What we've tried to do is to include as much of the responses as we possibly could. We have redacted some parts, and you'll see that within the pack, and that's where we thought that some of the information might be personally identifiable. The key findings of the report were that people really wanted to make sure that services were available in a crisis, that services were available to those in greatest need, that people stayed in hospital for the shortest time possible when they were medically fit to leave. There was a bit of a focus in relation to community-based care being the preference rather than looking at hospitalisation or some form of institution. And it was about the timely access to services and making sure those services were as close to home as they possibly could be. The reviews thought in particular saving options and the impacts. Some of the responses were reasonably mixed, but as has been highlighted in a range of different other venues through the development sessions, as well as the interim report that we brought, the proposals affecting adult day services as well as transport provision were actually given the highest opposition. Those are perceived as having the highest negative personal impact for people. There was support for the prescribed and savings plan. There's also support for the management and business support review. Digital and technology enabled care, they were viewed neutrally. Some people were very positive about them, but people were quite clear that they didn't want that to be a replacement for face-to-face care. They thought that that should be really about how we enhance the delivery of those care, that care. People did say that despite the mitigation measures that were identified, there was a substantial number of people who did say that the proposals were not acceptable. So we wanted to highlight in the report so that there was a clear element there. That's what people are saying. So we wanted to make sure that that was there. And they did want us to understand the cumulative impact of some of the measures and also some of the developments that have taken place over the last number of years. In terms of emerging themes, the people did highlight the need to safeguard vulnerable groups, particularly disabled adults and older people. There was a strong emphasis on the need to support and make sure that people were aware of the support as unpaid carers, and that was really about preventing burnout and supporting people to look after their own health as well as the health of the people who they care for. The importance of transport as an enabler service to access a range of different services as well as day services was highlighted, and also the need for prevention and early intervention services. I did ask people what they wanted the board to take into account when you were making your decision, and they did highlight the unintended consequences. And the board has already highlighted about understanding the unintended consequences of any of the implementation of the proposals. There was also the interconnectivity of some of the measures and the cumulative impact that that might have. They just wanted the board to think about that and the impact on families and carers. It was also highlighted about the increased pressure that was placed on carers as they balanced their caring responsibilities and roles with their own particular life. And again, it was highlighted in relation to the profile of unpaid carers generally. As they age, their needs change, as does the needs of the people who they are caring for, and also the impact on staff and the concerns and anxiety in terms of instability for some of those measures and that means for them. So the consultation broadly confirmed awareness of the general financial challenges that are faced by the board, alongside the strong concern about the impact of further reductions and impacts on people who were vulnerable, unpaid carers, and also for our workforce. But people did recognise that change was necessary. However, they were particularly anxious about what did that actually mean. Respondents clearly highlighted the need to protect preventative and community-based services, and that has been pulled through in the responses that we've got. Workforce sustainability was also highlighted as a particular issue, the impact on staff wellbeing, the skills, etc., that are required for the delivery of the services going forward. Feedback from parents and carers of adults with a disability highlighted that further work is still required to ensure that this group has meaningful opportunities to express their views on proposals and the potential impact should the board agree on them. And I think that's an area of work that we need to be considering how we do that. I've already highlighted that there was concerns in relation to the timing of the consultation and where it fitted with the council's consultation, and obviously about the support for unpaid carers. So we hope that the findings from the report that is included here, the detail that there provides the board with information to support your decision making in March. I'm happy to take any questions.
Sharon, thank you very much. Before we go any further, as I mentioned, we have shockingly I'm close to running out of time. I'd like to propose that we try and extend for I'd say for another 15 minutes, if beyond our scheduled time, because I'd like to give the Pharmacy First paper some attention as well. So if I can beg your indulgence in terms of another 15 minutes of your time, that would be great. Sharon, can I first of all say that, first of all, thank you for the huge amount of work I know you put into this consultation. I think this is a very, very important piece of work for us. I think getting feedback from the community around this, the tough decisions we're going to have to make is really essential for us moving into the next phase of what we have to do in terms of planning for 26, 27. So can I personally thank you for that, and thank you on behalf of the board. Any questions for Sharon on what is a comprehensive document? Tom.
Thanks, John. The work that was put into this, Sharon, is phenomenal, and presenting it in the form that it is, it's clear where the responses have been and what concerns the public or suggestions from the public. I'm just wondering, how do we take this forward? This is 2026, 2028, but clearly our focus at the moment is what's happening in the immediate future. But I'm just wondering, some of the suggestions, how do we respond to it rather than we've noted it? And a couple of things that I'll pull out from my view. I've mentioned previously about transport, and that seems to come out that's what the respondents are looking for, and how do we coordinate that better between whether it's the council who have a minibus service for delivery of its own clients to day centres or whatever, and as I've mentioned previously, the Scottish Ambulance Service who got patient transport. Is there something that we could be working on as part of this going forward and taking that as a contribution? I do have a concern, though, that on page 20, one of the comments that's being reported is phasing out West Lothian Council run care homes in favour of a more cost-effective third sector provision. And I'm just wondering, rather than that suggestion that board ask officers to go away and come back with a review on our existing care homes, do they meet the standards which are obviously happening in the private sector, and see how we can actually improve the delivery of care homes that we are responsible for. And I'm not saying that on the basis of previous budget decisions, but how do we actually provide a service in-house which actually meets the standards which families would do? And I don't know if it's appropriate as part of this consultation, but maybe from the budget perspective, if officers consider that as a way forward as well in dealing with that aspect of it, do we want to look at how we provide care homes? Do we need to provide 3? Do we need 2? Do we need whatever? But bearing in mind as well that we've had a whole change of how services is delivered at home and that type of thing. But I am concerned that that's coming out, that people want us, or some people want us to phase out West Lothian care. I don't subscribe to that view, but equally I recognise that our estate might not be as attractive as the private facilities or some private facilities. So
can I bring Alison in?
I think it felt unfair to let Sharon have to come in on that one. I suppose obviously we didn't, through the consultation, Tom, on this occasion, mention the closure of our in-house care homes. That wasn't something that we were putting forward as one of the proposals. I think it's always a timely thing for us to review to make sure that services generally, whether they're provided in-house or provided externally, are still fit for purpose, whether they're still meeting needs and whether they're still meeting what we require. And I think we've seen some shifts and changes in the care home market generally, with new care homes coming on track in a West Lothian context in terms of where we are. So I don't think it would be, obviously it hasn't been considered as part of this consultation, but I think it would be reasonable for us as officers to consider and explore what happened. We'd already, at the point we'd made the decision to keep the care homes open, had given a direction to look at whether or not they were offering best value and what we could do. And I think there's opportunities for us to continue along with that piece of work as we move forward, Tom. But yeah, it wasn't considered as part of this consultation, but you're right, there maybe does need to be further work on that, and officers can look to work alongside colleagues. There was, Stevie's put his hand up around this, there was a lot of sense from staff about what that would mean, and I suppose it would be how we would engage as we're looking at what models of care need to look like as we move forward with our staff team internally who deliver services as well as our external market.
I think Tom, it points to the value of the consultation in reminding us or signposting us to other activities that we need to do, including continued care home provision review. So I think it just signals back to the value of this whole exercise. Stevie.
Yeah, I think you're right, Alison. This isn't even part of the consultation, Tommy. You've taken one comment from a consultation that overwhelmingly said that members of the public want the council to provide these services, not commission services, particularly when it comes to day services, when it comes to adults with disabilities and stuff. Sharon, I want to thank you for the report. It's despite the difficulties we had with the council being run at the same time, I think we have managed to capture the essence of how people feel as service users. Are we going to extend the consultation to staff now? I've had some of our members approach us with great ideas, particularly around about community transport and some savings that could be made there. But I think we have to look at the details of that, and I'm happy to discuss that with Karen and Alison at some point. Yeah, but I think it's pretty clear that how important these services are to people, even if they are non-statutory, they stop people going into statutory services. And I think it's clear how important people feel that it's the council that provide these services as well.
Thanks, Stevie. Sharon, do you want to come back on that?
Not necessarily on that point. I suppose it was more just an offer of we've asked people to give us their views, and they've given the views, whether it's about things we could improve, etc. I do wonder whether or not the board would want us to be tasked with taking away the details of further developments and further approaches and further considerations, and pulling that maybe to present to the board at a development session, and taking on what Stevie suggested there as well about looking at other options.
I think I'd certainly welcome that. I think this consultation activity has been really beneficial. I think we're looking for your recommendations as to what more we could do. So follow up on the output from the consultation and then other consultation activities. So yes, I think if you could come back with something that gives us some options and recommendations as to where we could take this piece of work, that would be great, Sharon. Anne.
Yeah, I think for me personally, I think we need to be careful that we don't run with certain parts of what people have said and then as a result disadvantage inequity across the piece. We need to look at the whole population and make sure that there's some fairness of how everybody's going to be affected, because everybody is going to be affected.
I would agree with that, Anne. And again, I think it's a point I think we made previously that this forum, both in the board sessions and the development sessions, is where we can bring all of that information. I would not say that so the consultation responses form part of us pulling together a full picture. And it's there really to support decision making, not actually necessarily to specifically drive from one aspect or another. Thank you. Can I draw time on that issue and give Carol? Oh, Carol, I'm sorry. You've got a vanishingly small time to do justice to what is quite a comprehensive activity as well. So my apologies.
That's okay. In the paper, I have presented information from the Lothian Pharmaceutical Care Services Plan, and that outlines the different services that are available from community pharmacies across Lothian. And I've highlighted the numbers of community pharmacies, where applicable, that are delivering those services across West Lothian. The services are broken down into the core contract services, of which there's 4. Then there's the nationally commissioned services and locally commissioned services. So that is all in the detail of the report. The presentation that I've got is a few slides going over some of the data for some of those services that we have got from our community pharmacy development colleagues. Next slide, please. So this is showing our Pharmacy First activity. This is a core contract. So this is part of the National Community Pharmacy Core Contract. The other services included in that are public health, medicines care and review, which includes serial prescribing, and then acute prescribing. So as you can see, year on year for the past 4 years, we have had increased activities across Pharmacy First. This offers patients an opportunity to access care quickly, or it used to be minor ailments is the name of the service previously. So for more minor clinical conditions. The reason that we've got data only up to 23-24 is that the data previously we had been getting was on an annual basis, and the last full year that we had was the 23-24 data. This is a service that all community pharmacies across Lothian offer. Next slide, please. So this is showing us what the activity is across each of the different HSCPs in Lothian. As you can see, West Lothian has got 21% of the activity and 21% of the spend. So that is telling us that our activity is in line with the patient population that we have in West Lothian, and that the prescribing, so the medicines that are being chosen by our community pharmacy colleagues are following the guidance that we have, that we're not out of step with any of the other HSCPs around the cost of the prescribing from our community pharmacy colleagues. And then we've got a bit there about the referral rates. So in general, for Pharmacy First, they are referring about 5% of the patients they see back to GP colleagues. So they are able to deal with 95% of the activity that comes in through their doors. Next slide. In addition to the more general Pharmacy First service, more recently, Scottish Government have put in place patient group directions for specific clinical conditions. So a patient group direction is required when a medicine is prescription only, and this allows a non-prescriber to supply a prescription medicine under certain circumstances. So the 5 different patient group directions that are in place currently are for urinary tract infections, hay fever, skin infections, shingles, and impetigo. Again, we've been seeing activity for those 5 PGDs increasing. As you can see, upwards of 63% of the patients that present to the community pharmacies are given treatment in the community pharmacy. Depending on the clinical condition, there's differing degrees of referral. As you would expect, there's low levels of onward referral for hay fever, whereas shingles, where there will be more exceptions or exemptions to the PGD that would require referral on to GP practice. That is some of the difference in there. And again, we're seeing that there's differences in activity rates for these, as you would expect. Hay fever spikes over the summer months, and we've been seeing over the last 12 months an increase in each of the other 4 PGDs as people get more aware that community pharmacy can offer those medications. So that's kind of where we are with the patient group direction ones. Next slide. So then this is the other activity. So the smoking cessation and the emergency hormonal contraception, those are part of the public health services that are offered. The data is quite small. The one on the top left is showing the proportion of quit attempts that are delivered by either the Quit Your Way team or the community pharmacies across Lothian. So as you can see, the number of quit attempts that are being done by community pharmacies are kind of in line with the Quit Your Way team. So there is a substantial amount of activity coming from community pharmacies. The chart on the top right is telling us kind of where we are. So we are, the purple line is West Lothian. So we're kind of where you'd expect us to be in terms of our patient population compared with other HSCPs. The emergency hormonal contraception, so that is slightly different in terms of activity for it. Edinburgh has got a higher activity. If you look at West Lothian compared with East and Mid, then again, we're kind of in line with the difference in populations between those HSCPs. And the injection equipment provision, we have got 4 pharmacies in West Lothian offering the service versus 8 in Edinburgh. So again, kind of in line with what you would expect. Next slide. So this is then serial prescribing information. We are the yellow line in West Lothian. So over the 9 months, January 25 to September 25, we have continued to see an increase in the amount of patients that are receiving serial prescriptions as a repeat prescribing option. This chart isn't weighted for list size, so we're not kind of comparing based on the size of the HSCP. We know that East Lothian, in terms of their patient population, have got a higher percentage rate than other HSCPs. West Lothian are performing well against the others. We're kind of slightly below East Lothian, but we're performing better than Edinburgh or Mid Lothian. Next slide. And then one of the actions from the Pharmaceutical Care Services Plan Action Plan is to look at developing a community pharmacy measurement framework. So this is an extract from the dashboard that they're currently developing. And as I've said, we're only able to get kind of annual data at the moment, which is from an annual report. Once this dashboard is fully developed, it will allow us to be able to access data more easily. So we should be able to ask more questions about kind of what activity we're seeing for our patient population in West Lothian. Next slide.
Carol, could I? I'm really sorry to do this to you. Oh, you've said, there you go.
Finished.
Any questions for Carol? Well, timing's spectacular, Carol. Well done. Any questions for Carol? It's an area which I think we're going to have to come back to because it's really quite important. And I'm sorry we've run out of time for in this session. Any questions for Carol? Okay, Alison, could I suggest we reschedule something, because I think there are a lot of questions around the amount of prescriptions that are happening within the pharmacy versus GPs. I think there are a number of things that we should be exploring in more detail. I think I could also maybe say to you for maybe the next board session, we need to make it about 2.5 hours, given the level of debate we've been having. Thank you. If we can note the contents of the report, please. I think I also need you to confirm we note the contents of the consultation report as well. Thank you very much. Anastasia, work plan.
Chair, there's nothing from me, just in case members have any comments. Otherwise, it's just a note.
Marvellous. Thank you, Anastasia. And to note that the date of the next meeting is an in-person meeting on 24th of March. I think we're probably going to need a significant amount of time. It's going to be an interesting session. Can I thank you all for your forbearance and my terrible timekeeping? Also for the quality of the inputs and the discussion today. Thank you all for your contributions, really very much appreciated. And also your continued support of the board. Thank you very much and good afternoon.